What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an update for a video I did some time ago to provide people an answer for some frequently asked questions that I get all the time in regards to my reviews after 100%. So pushing almost 2 years ago now, when the channel had around 10,000 subscribers, give or take, I made a similar video answering these kinds of questions about my approach to reviews, the things I cover, etc. And given how old that video is, on top of updated equipment, etc., I thought it was time to revisit that video and get it a little more up to date, as reviewing games after 100% has pretty much become the largest thing this channel does, though I do a few other things as well. So with that in mind, this video will become the first video people see when they open up the channel page if they are not subscribed, and will get linked in the description below for further videos. So when I do my reviews after 100%, I have something to point people towards if they want a full breakdown, thus avoiding having to do it for every review I make. Now, to kick this off, I think the most basic question to answer is why I do this, and the simplest answer to that question, though there is a bit more to it, is simply that I want to. So I was 100%ing games a lot before I started reviewing them this way, and now that this has become my full-time job, it's something that I do much more frequently, but it is something I had always done, because personally, I don't really feel like I've gotten my money's worth out of a game until I've seen everything that it has to offer. So I took that slightly obsessive approach and found a way to make it a bit more productive, which is what has largely grown this channel, on top of making some very in-depth guides about some more complicated games that people don't make too much content for. Because while I do cover pretty much every genre of RPG at this point, CRPGs are a personal favorite of mine, though they tend to be a bit niche. That said though, the other half of why I do this is about building trust and integrity. So as I'm sure many of the people watching this are quite aware, as the gaming industry has evolved, there's become a lot of questions around the integrity of reviews, how much of the game they've actually played, whether or not you can trust them to be legitimate, that kind of thing. And while I don't really have any interest in whether or not that's true for various journalistic outlets, what I do know is that that perception is there. So what I try to do to alleviate that is go, I've played as much of this as possible, which is why my Steam profile is public, linked in the description of all my videos, as well as on my channel page itself, for people to check out and verify things via the achievements. But even that right there, though, isn't a perfect metric, because as we all know, achievements sometimes aren't very representative of everything that a game has to offer. Though this does vary a bit game to game, but what achievements are is a very easy public way to convey the idea of 100%. So I do round up all the achievements as part of these 100%, but there is usually more involved outside of a game with a particularly thorough achievement list. So while I do point my audience to these things, if they want that sort of public metric that I can provide, the other part of it is trying to talk about these reviews and my thoughts about a game in a more in-depth way than you typically see. Now, for me personally, that tends to lean a little more on the mechanical side. I'm very interested in how things work behind the scenes, stats at play, combat systems, various things like that, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise, as that is a lot of what CRPGs tend to be. And while I do try to cover the sort of feelings that a game can evoke, I admit that my strong suit lies in the mechanical breakdowns of games. And over time, I've gotten a little bit better about sharing my thoughts on individual things, and providing more of my opinions on top of the objective truths about what a game is, which is something I'm personally always working on. But obviously, as I've mentioned, achievements are not a perfect way to gauge that metric, so what all am I referring to when I say a review after 100%? And obviously that's a fair question. So to give a pretty general breakdown, for me that includes all of the main quests as well as its offshoots, that is to say branching narrative paths through the story. I try to see all of those, all of the endings, as well as all of the side content via various quests, on top of things like map exploration, going around seeing everything there is to offer out in the actual world of a game, or the levels, or whatever that particular type of game happens to have. Then of course the achievements themselves, as those are included, but not the total package. And last but not least, after that is pretty much anything that is game specific, which obviously again varies quite a bit genre to genre, but the general gist of it is, if a game offers you multiple types of combat, I try to see as much of that as possible, all the different ways you can approach a build, things like that. At the very least, until I get to a point where I'm comfortable talking about it with a degree of understanding how it actually works, and the strengths and weaknesses for each. So with all of that stuff said, towards the end of this video, I want to talk about a few other things, mostly, again, just questions people ask pretty regularly that I'd like to answer, as the spirit of what I do is very important to me, which are things like, why don't I stream more, uploading just full Let's Plays, that kind of thing, as well as various ways you can cheese achievements via uploading save files, that kind of thing. So let's dive into that stuff. First and foremost, when it comes to streaming, believe it or not, I find it very difficult to stream. I don't feel like I have the personality for it. Somewhat ironically, in my real life, my day-to-day, I don't really talk that much. On days I don't have my son, for instance, it's not uncommon for the very first time I speak for the entire day to be when I start recording things for a video. So combining all those things makes streaming something I'm just not really comfortable doing, because it would be something like 10 plus hours a day in most cases, during all of which I would need to be frankly more entertaining to not make it abysmal. And again, I just really don't feel like I have the personality for it, and while I do try to stream on occasion, it's just not something I enjoy doing all of the time, which is why I try to reserve it for more special instances. Now, on the flip side of that, when it comes to uploading just raw gameplay every day, in terms of just an unedited, no commentary, like raw bit of gameplay uploads, I don't do this for a variety of reasons, most of which is logistical. So for starters, this would have to be done on a second channel, because those videos would not do well, especially if they were just completely uploaded raw. Second, the process of actually uploading that would be nightmarish, so recording that much gameplay all the time could be hundreds of gigabytes, potentially even terabytes of data at times, that I would constantly be trying to upload to YouTube, which often has trouble just getting like a 20 gigabyte review in. So trying to upload that much raw footage all at once would be pretty bad, especially when I'm trying to upload my daily videos, which is the other part of it. In order to make raw footage like that not be terrible as an experience to watch, I would need to edit it and provide some amount of voiceover, which would take up pretty much all of my time because I do this by myself. If I wanted to do that, I would have to hire someone, which I'm not really interested in doing, because even that would cut into the time I'm already spending working on my daily uploads every day, on top of actually going through and 100%ing all of these games. So in regards to streaming and uploading sort of just raw Let's Plays, it largely just comes down to me doing what I as a person am capable of doing on my own at this point, because while I do feel like I certainly put out a lot more content, especially with these 100% reviews, than most people, and I put basically all of my effort into that, it has pretty much tapped me out in terms of what I'm capable of doing at this point, because when it comes to doing more content-wise, I would just need help, and even if I had that help, I would then have to direct them towards what I need them to do and oversee what I have them doing, which would still take time away from the things I want to do for the channel, which are these reviews and my daily uploads that I enjoy. So hopefully that's an understandable explanation. And last but not least, here towards the end, another reason that achievements are not a perfect metric, and I try to let the reviews speak for themselves in terms of what I've done for the game, is simply because achievements can be sort of spoofed or cheesed, however you want to do it. There's a variety of ways to do this. A very simple one being that sometimes people will just upload save games to like the cloud or whatever and allow other people to download them, and then you can just load that save file for a game you own on your computer, which will then unlock all the associated achievements, or say one in particular that somebody's struggling with, that kind of thing. And that's just one of many ways people can do that kind of thing. So because of that, I've always tried to make a point not to really drive home the achievements very much. While they're certainly a part of these reviews, and I do try to share videos for my daily uploads here and there that sort of explain parts that I struggled with, that kind of thing, ultimately I just don't feel like they're a very good way to convey completion of a game versus just the actual review that I make, and thus explaining all the various bits of a game in a lot more detail than reviews typically do is what I feel is much more impactful. And while that is backed up with public metrics that I can point people towards, the other half of it is that I don't want the channel to be about claiming that I'm some amazing gamer or something. The entire point is reviewing games, talking about them, dissecting them, helping people get an idea of what they are, as well as offering up my own thoughts and opinions and having some discussion around those things. Because again, as I mentioned towards the start of this video, that has admittedly run on a bit longer than I wanted it to, the primary purpose of the reviews after 100% is building some trust and integrity with my audience that people can then take my opinion, decide whether or not they agree with it, and regardless of whether you do or not, I can at least say that I played all of this game and my opinion is what it is for a reason. As the spirit of what I do is very important to me, especially in this environment where the perception, at least, of whether or not reviewers can be trusted on what they're saying exists. And that is pretty much all I've got to say on the matter, so I hope you enjoyed this sort of updated channel video, as I tried to both keep what was important about the original video, as it does serve a purpose, as well as answer some of the more common questions that have been asked as the channel continues to grow, roughly 12 times over since the original video was released. But all of that said, I hope you found this informative and that it answered your questions, and if you've watched this all the way to the end, I really do appreciate it. People have shown an amazing amount of support to the channel over the years, which is why it has gotten so large at this point, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow, hopefully, and maybe in another couple years I'll have to redo this again. But as it stands, that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.